Story 1. The Stranger in the Storm. The August night was heavy with the promise of rain, the air thick with an electric charge that prickled the skin. In a small suburban home nestled on the edge of a quiet town, 13-year-old Ethan reveled in the rare freedom of being home alone. His parents, trusting his burgeoning sense of responsibility, had left him for the weekend. Their only rule etched in stone: no leaving the house, no visitors. For Ethan, this was paradise. A chance to crank up his music, lose himself in video games, and bask in the solitude of a rainy night. As the first drops pattered against the windows, Ethan sat on the covered porch, mesmerized by the distant flashes of lightning that illuminated the horizon. Thunderstorms had always held a special magic for him, a legacy from his grandfather, who taught him to find beauty in the chaos of nature. The scent of rain mingled with memories of those shared moments, and Ethan smiled, unaware of the shadow creeping closer to his world. Inside, he set up his Xbox on his father's prized flat-screen TV in the den, the Bose sound system filling the room with the explosive chaos of Call of Duty, Black Ops. Online, he bantered with his friend Cody through a cheap headset, their laughter punctuated by the occasional rumble of thunder. The storm grew fiercer, the wind howling as rain lashed the windows, but Ethan was lost in the game, oblivious to the world beyond the screen. Then a sharp chime cut through the noise, the doorbell. Ethan froze, his heart thudding. It was past 9 p.m., far too late for visitors. "Yo, Cody, someone's at the door," he whispered into the headset, his voice trembling. Cody, ever the instigator, urged him to check it out. Ethan hesitated, his gamer's instincts screaming caution, but curiosity won. He paused the game, crept upstairs, and peered through the peephole. Darkness stared back. "Who's there?" he called, his voice cracking. A low, gravelly voice answered. "I need to use your phone." Ethan's stomach twisted. The voice was unfamiliar, tinged with a desperate edge that sent a chill down his spine. He backed away, retreating to the den, but the damage was done. He'd revealed he was home. Minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Cody's voice crackled through the headset. "Ignore it, man. Probably some creep." Ethan tried to focus on the game, but his nerves were frayed. The storm raged on, each thunderclap amplifying his unease. He told himself the stranger had left, that it was just a random passerby caught in the rain, but deep down, he knew better. As he sank back into the game, a faint creak snapped him to attention. His eyes darted to the backyard door in the den, just in time to see it easing shut. A tall, shadowy figure stepped inside, rain dripping from a tattered coat. Ethan's breath caught. This was no neighbor, no lost traveler. The man's face was obscured, but his presence radiated menace. Panic surged through Ethan. He dropped the controller, the headset ripping free, and bolted for the office adjacent to the den. Slamming the door shut, he fumbled with the lock just as the handle rattled violently. "Open the door, kid!" the man bellowed, his voice a guttural snarl. Ethan's heart pounded as he backed away, his mind racing. The office had another door leading to the garage, his only escape. The man pounded on the door, each blow shaking the frame. "I just need your phone," he shouted, but his tone was laced with fury, not desperation. Ethan knew he couldn't stay. He hit the garage door opener, wincing at its deafening groan, and crawled under the half-open door into the storm. Rain stung his face as he sprinted through the deluge, his sneakers slipping on wet grass, until he reached the home of Julian, a neighbor whose dog Ethan had played with as a child. Julian answered the door, his face creasing with concern, as Ethan, soaked and trembling, poured out his story. Julian's wife called the police, while Julian grabbed a flashlight and stood watch. The wait was agonizing, each minute stretching into eternity until sirens pierced the night. Officers stormed Ethan's house, emerging minutes later with a man in handcuffs. A disheveled figure reeking of alcohol, ranting that the house was his, that Ethan was his son. The man, John McCarty, was charged with criminal trespass. Ethan's parents, shaken, pressed charges, but the incident left scars deeper than any court could heal. Ethan never felt safe in that house again. The memory of that stormy night, a constant reminder that even the familiar could harbor danger. Thunderstorms, once a source of wonder, now carried a whisper of dread, a reminder of the stranger who'd slipped through the rain. Story 2, The Shadow Beneath the Bed. The clock glowed 4 a.m., its dim light casting eerie shadows across Sarah's bedroom. Outside, a thunderstorm roared, one of the worst to hit her small town in years. Rain hammered the windows, and the wind howled with a ferocity that seemed almost alive. Sarah, 16, lay awake, her phone her only companion in the powerless house. Her mother and grandparents slept soundly down the hall, oblivious to the storm's fury. Sarah had always loved thunderstorms, their raw power a thrilling contrast to her quiet life. She'd spent countless nights with her grandfather, watching lightning dance across the sky, his stories weaving magic into the chaos. But tonight something felt off. The wind, with its unpredictable shifts from soft whispers to deafening roars, stirred a primal unease in her chest. As she scrolled through Reddit, the power flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. Sarah shrugged it off, switching to her phone's data, but the storm's intensity grew, the rain sounding like pebbles against the glass. Fatigue finally tugged at her eyelids, and she set her phone on the nightstand, rolling over to sleep. She awoke to silence, the rain replaced by an unsettling calm. The wind still whispered outside, but the house felt too still, as if holding its breath. Thirst gnawed at her, her mouth dry as sandpaper. Grumbling, she grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and shuffled toward the kitchen. The living room was freezing, a sharp contrast to her warm bedroom. Sarah pulled on a sweater, her breath visible in the chilly air. As she neared the kitchen, the wind grew louder, carrying a faint, unplaceable sound. She filled a glass with water, her flashlight beam dancing across the counter, when she noticed the patio door ajar, its glass panel swaying in the breeze. Her heart skipped. Had her grandfather left it open? He was forgetful sometimes, but this felt wrong. She crept toward the door, her pulse quickening, and slid it shut, locking it with a decisive click. The cold air lingered, raising goosebumps on her arms. She hurried back to her room, locking the door behind her. But the unease clung to her like damp clothes. In bed, she tried to calm herself, the flashlight casting a feeble glow. But a nagging fear whispered, "What if someone's in the house?" She dragged her desk chair to the door, wedging it under the handle, and checked her closet, her heart pounding. Satisfied, she climbed back into bed, the flashlight her only comfort. Then a soft thump came from beneath her bed, followed by the creak of springs. Sarah froze, her breath hitching. She hadn't checked under the bed. Terror gripped her as she leaned over the edge, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The beam caught a ghastly sight. A gaunt woman, her skin stretched taut over bones, her bloodshot eyes gleaming with malice. Yellowed teeth bared in a grotesque grin, she stared at Sarah, unblinking. Sarah's scream caught in her throat. The woman cackled, a sound like shattering glass, and Sarah leapt from the bed, yanking the chair aside and sprinting to her grandparents' room. She pounded on the door, sobbing, until her grandfather emerged, a pistol in hand, a secret he'd never shared. Her grandmother followed, pale with fear. They stormed back to Sarah's room, her grandfather leading with the gun raised. A white figure darted past the window, vanishing into the storm. Her grandfather fired a warning shot, the crack echoing through the night. They searched the house, finding no trace of the intruder, but the open patio door told its own story. They didn't call the police, knowing the lack of evidence would render it pointless. Instead, they planned to install locks on every window and door, a belated shield against the unknown. Sarah never slept easily again, the memory of that grinning face haunting her dreams. Thunderstorms, once a source of joy, now carried the specter of that night, a reminder that danger could lurk in the shadows of even the safest homes. Story 3, The Figures in the Forest. The August sky was a tapestry of bruised clouds as Jake and his girlfriend Cassidy arrived at his family's mobile home in the remote upstate wilderness. The 600-square-foot retreat, with its single bedroom, pull-out couch, and modest kitchen, was their haven for a weekend of luxury camping. Surrounded by dense forests, the property offered archery, dirt biking, and off-roading, a perfect escape from city life. Friday was spent settling in, unpacking, and grabbing groceries from a nearby town. Saturday buzzed with activity, the couple tearing through trails on dirt bikes and testing their aim at the archery range. But as dusk approached, the sky darkened, heavy clouds rolling in like an advancing army. The air grew thick, charged with the promise of a storm. They stowed their gear in the outbuilding and settled inside, popping a DVD into the player as they cooked dinner. The storm broke with a vengeance, rain pounding the roof like a drum roll, lightning splitting the sky. Jake and Cassidy, undeterred, moved to the deck under the canopy, their plates in hand, marveling at the spectacle. Bolts of lightning illuminated the forest, each strike followed by thunder so loud it shook the air. Then a sound cut through the storm, a voice, faint but unmistakable, calling from the woods. Jake's fork froze halfway to his mouth. The property was miles from civilization. No one should be out there, especially in this weather. Cassidy's eyes widened, her voice barely a whisper. "Did you hear that?" Jake nodded, his jaw tight. "Probably a lost hiker," he said, trying to sound calm. He stepped to the edge of the deck, rain misting his face, and squinted into the darkness. A flash of lightning revealed a figure at the tree line, motionless, clad in bright clothing that gleamed white in the brief light. Jake's stomach churned. This wasn't a hiker seeking help. He returned to Cassidy, forcing a smile. "Let's go inside," he said, nudging her toward the door. But curiosity pulled him back to the deck's edge. Another lightning flash showed the figure closer now, barely 20 feet away, standing still as a statue. Jake's heart raced. He locked the door behind them, his calm facade crumbling as Cassidy saw the fear in his eyes. They sat in silence, the storm's roar filling the void. 5 agonizing minutes passed before footsteps thudded on the deck, deliberate and heavy. Jake's pulse spiked. He expected a knock, a plea for shelter, but instead came a strange shuffling, as if someone were testing the door. Cassidy, trembling, retreated to the bedroom, urging Jake to follow. He grabbed his father's rifle from under the bed, the cold metal grounding him. A loud bang rattled the bedroom window, followed by another from the living room. There was more than one person out there. Jake's fear turned to resolve. He told Cassidy to stay put and move to the front door, rifle in hand. With a deep breath, he unlocked it, yanked it open, and stepped into the storm. The deck was empty, but a figure stood below, the same man in bright clothes, staring up with unsettling calm. Jake fired a warning shot into the air, the crack echoing through the forest. The man cursed and fled, his voice joined by others fading into the night. Jake scanned the darkness, rain soaking his clothes, but the intruders were gone. The next morning, they packed up and left, the home untouched, but the memory of the night heavy in their minds. Jake never learned who the figures were, pranksters, drifters, or something worse. The wilderness, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap, its isolation a double-edged sword. He returned with his family occasionally, but never alone. The storm's echo a warning of the dangers lurking beyond the trees.